if you noticed, Jessica introduced me as Richard Barr, which is my name, but that is also a grand illusion that is what I'm going to talk about tonight, is that when you ask any of us who we are, we respond with our name as if that is something unique to us. But on the day I was born, I met another Richard Barr, because I was named for my father, something I didn't like, because I wanted to have my own name. I didn't want a used hand-me-down. But, of course, he didn't call himself Richard Barr either. He, in his generation, he called himself Dick Barr. And I, of course, was Dickie, to everyone except one uncle who liked to call us Big Dick and Little Dick. I didn't appreciate that much. But when I reached my majority and I left home, I went to New York City. I was going to go to film school, School of Visual Arts, and I decided that Richard Barr would look better in film credits, you know. And now at school, they had a file drawer full of 8x10 glossy headshots of actors, which they hand out in lieu of business cards. And these were people who had agreed to appear in student films. So I went through to cast my film, and I was really amazed at how eagerly people responded to my calling them. And then I found out that there is at the time there is, a legendary Broadway producer named Richard Barr. I'd never heard of him, but every actor in New York knew him. And there was one call in particular. The actor wasn't home, so I spoke to his service. In those days, that was pre-voicemail, pre-answering machine, where you actually hired a real person to answer your phone. And I gave him my name and phone number. And a few hours later, I get this call back. And the actor says, "I'm sorry I missed your call, but I'm in a play in Washington, D.C., but I'll quit and I'll come back to New York if you want me." And I said, "No, I'm not him. I'm not related to him. This is a student film." He says, "I don't care, I'll come back. And it took me about 5 minutes to talk him down, to make him realize that 2 days' work on a student film is not the break he was looking for. But I kind of got a kick out of it, because now I was sharing a name with someone who was famous and accomplished, and I thought that was kind of neat. That was then. Now we'll flash forward until just 2 years ago. I'm in real estate. My cell phone is exclusively for business, and I get a call. And a woman says, "Are you Richard Barr?" And I thought, "Oh, good, I've got a new client." And I said, "Yes." And she says, "Well, I have to confirm this. Can you give me your date of birth?" And then I knew it wasn't a client. And I said, "I'm sorry. I have a standing policy. I do not give out personal information on the phone, ever." And she said, "Well, we know all about you." And I said, "Then you should know that I don't give out personal information on the phone." And so he said, "Well, then, how about if you're not going to give me your date of birth, what are the last 4 digits of your Social Security number?" I said, "That sounds like personal information to me, and I don't do that." And we went round and round for a few minutes, and finally she hung up. I noted down the number. She called back the next day. She called back the next day. Someone else called back from her number the day after that. I traced that number backwards and found out it was a collection agency in Connecticut. Now, this was surprising to me, because my dear wife came from a country where there is no credit culture. So we owe nothing to anybody. This is her doing, not mine, but we've paid everybody off and owe nothing. And at some point, someone said it was about education. I think, no, my education ended decades ago. It's not about education. But people kept calling. And they started calling from different phone numbers. Now, it's my business phone, so I have to answer the calls, except once I've started keeping track of the numbers, I would know I don't have to answer this number because I know what it's about. And when they tried a new number on me, I would just hang up because no one was listening to me. I said, "I'm not the person you want." Then one day I came into work. This is about 6 or 7 months after it started. I go into work, and my broker calls me into her office, and she hands me a piece of paper, and she says, "What do you know about this?" And I looked at it, and it was a very official-looking order to garnish my pay. Now, the first thing I thought of was that this is not real, because I get no pay. I'm on commission. I have no salary. You can't garnish anything. And then I looked at it, and I looked on the back to see what court had issued this order of garnishment and who had signed it. And there was no signature. There was no court listed. There was no stamp. And I said, this is a fake thing. They just do this to scare people. And then I looked at the top, and it was for a Richard W. Barr. I'm not a W. And he had an address in Richmond. I have never lived in Richmond. It had a social security number that was not mine. Now, my broker had seen all this before, so she knew it wasn't me. But the most interesting thing was the amount that was owed. It was $248,000 in change in the student loans. And I'm in real estate. I know how hard it is to get a mortgage for that amount. And somebody got student loans without anybody knowing how to reach them. So I was a little impressed by that. But there's nothing I had to do about it. And the calls continued. I would get calls every day, sometimes 2 and 3 times a day, over and over again. Now, like I said, I didn't answer most of them anymore. Finally, after about a year, we'll go back up just a little bit. I looked up, I figured this was a real estate issue thing, and I looked up on the licensing website, which is dpor.com if you're interested. And you can find any real estate agent who's licensed in Virginia. So I looked it up, and there was a Richard W. Barr in Richmond who had a real estate license. So now, after about a year, I get a call from someone else that the debt has been sold from one agency to another. And the gentleman on the phone there was a little more understanding than these other people who strictly worked from scripts. And he listened when I told him, I'm not the one you want, and here's how you can prove that. Go to dpor.com, and you'll find there is a Richard W. Barr in Richmond, and I'm the other one. And so, of course, the calls continued for another several days, but then it finally stopped. And it had been 15 months of all this harassment, you see. And they like to tell you that the big threat is identity theft. I had identity assignment. It's just the opposite, where they gave something to you. And it drove home the point that names aren't who we are really. As a matter of fact, it's like DNA. Most of what makes us who we are belongs to a lot of other people as well. And the only true thing, I think, is what Robin Williams referred to as that little spark of madness, which everybody is trying to squash, and we really need to protect that.